What is going on, everybody? We are back, episode 14, with special guest Travis Wingfield. This one's going to be fun. A little bit of a Royal Rumble. I don't know if Bobby still has the soundboard added. You do have a bell on there, right?
No.
Oh, you don't have a bell on. Never mind. I was excited for it. Finally, the one time that I get excited about Bobby's soundboard and I'm not screaming about it, he doesn't have it.
Hate to see
but
it.
We are just a little bit behind today. We were having too much fun backstage like we always do. So I think we're just going to hit up the intro. What do you guys think?
Let it roll.
Sounds good to me. Let's get into it.
Roll the tape.
Putting the helmet on is always
The opportunity is right now.
Terrific defensive play. Intercepted. From the Balboa. Off the block. Two on the move. Going deep. Speedways. He's got Hill. He's got Hill. The Dolphins have recaptured the lead.
Shout out FinHub for that incredible intro. Goosebumps every time. He's got Hill. I would love to get Kevin Harlan on here too. That'd be so amazing. But let's get this going. We got a lot of hype going in this one. A lot of people want to see this episode, and they're going to have to wait to the last half of the episode. We got a lot to talk about. Travis Wingfield, Drive Time podcast host, the official podcast of the Miami Dolphins. How are you doing today, Travis?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. I missed podcast episode number 13 by one, based upon the intro there. But Jarvis Landry, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think Marlon Moore, maybe Roberto Wallace, one of those receivers back from the aughts, wore number 14 too. So good company there. But it's good to be with you guys here. Long time in the making. Ghost, Mr. Robbie, yourself, and Bobby Schaus. Like, where is your famous Dolphins legend that you're imitating the ghost of here? We have a couple of other guys that, Joe Robbie and the Ghost Adam Gaze. Like, what's your moniker?
I got just myself, which is kind of apparently disappointing, but it's just me, man.
yeah,
He's a big Liam Eichenberg guy. I think he really embodies that spirit. So good for you, Bobby. But today we have a great show for you today. What we're going to do, this is actually the way that this worked out so well is that Final Cuts just happened 3 hours ago. So this is probably one of the first podcasts that's really going to dive into it. And Travis, having you on here 3 hours after the 53 just got, released to the public, that we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're pretty grateful. I mean, like this is like the timing of this. I didn't actually expect that when we talked back in May getting you on, and we wanted to make sure it was a good episode and we had a lot of content, but the way things worked out, I'm very grateful for it. But yeah, we're happy to talk about that. So were there any surprises to you on this 53? Because it seemed a little bit straightforward. There were some, tweaks that we didn't see coming, like four wide receivers on the final 53. But from your perspective, you follow the team every day. I'd like to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think the first thing to always remember when they have these, there's a reason they use the word initial, right? Because like what you see is probably not what you're going to get. And I know you've seen the tweets about Blake Ferguson and the vested veteran move to make an acquisition there to potentially throw somebody else on the injured reserve that might not be ready to go for the start of the season, but you don't want to expose them to the risk of the waiver wire. So I think that, for every team in the NFL right now, none of these rosters are going to look this way, when they kick off for week one. So that's always the first thing to remember, because to your point, the four receivers, it kind of reminds me of, speaking of the Ghost of Adam Gaze, that one year, was it like 4 or 5 quarterbacks they had in the roster with Luke Falk, go Cougs, Coug legend there. But we thought then it wasn't going to be that way forever. And they kept those 4 guys going into the season. So I guess sometimes it is what you get. But I think in this instance, yeah, I mean, River Craycraft was a guy that had pretty clearly, go Cougs once again, earned his way onto the roster with his training camp performance in the last couple of years. So I think that he was a guy that was carved out to have a role there. And I thought that when he went down, that opened the door for someone like Eric Ezukama, maybe. I was kind of expecting to possibly have him on there, especially with the Craycraft injury and then Odell Beckham going on the PUP. I just thought that he offered, in addition to his vertical skill set that he showed off this preseason and that first one a couple of years ago, the tackle breaking ability and whatnot. So I thought that he was kind of a fit there. But Maybe Neville Gallimore on the other side, I thought had a pretty good run of games in the preseason. I thought he was a guy that could possibly be a rotation piece in that defensive tackle room. And who knows what the plan is going forward with those guys. But those were some guys that popped off that I thought had pretty good training camps that didn't wind up on the 53.
Now, when you look at the four wide receivers, I think that's a big talking point right now on the timeline. And of course, like you said, this is the initial roster. You have the Blake Ferguson probably coming back very shortly. You have Tanner Connor now, 4-4 guy, 4-3 guy. You have Jonnu Smith. You have Julian Hill. You have those guys in the tight end room. And then I put out a tweet that was kind of facetious, kind of sarcastic, but I was kind of being serious. Devon Achane could lead this team, as the third wide receiver this year in receiving yards, because we saw that preseason game with all the starters. He was split out in X or Y or X or Z, probably just about every snap. He took very few snaps out of the backfield. Is that something that you can see, or is this going to be we're going to be elevating guys throughout the season until Odell comes back, possibly week 6 or week 7 after the bye?
I think you're close to what the answer to that is in terms of the tight end and running back position are two groups that we use more than other teams across the National Football League. And no one runs more of a combination of 12 and 21 personnel than we do. And Alec Ingold's a big part of that, but also they fell in love with that fast 21 personnel last year where it's not Ingold, it's Achane along with Raheem Mostert. And I mean, I got to try to find snaps for Jalen Wright too. I don't know how you do it, but you got to find a way to get that guy in the field because he is electric. He is quick to find his decisions, especially on inside runs. And it felt like every day at training camp, I was tweeting, this guy's got a touchdown run from mid red zone, like the 8 to 12 yard line in that range. That's such a valuable asset to have. And then to your point about the tight ends too, I think Jonnu Smith and Julian Hill, I can't really conjure up a better 1-2 punch of guys that complement each other's skill sets. And then Durham Smythe kind of does everything. And then Tanner Connor can bust his butt down the field on special teams. And if something were to happen to Jonnu, he feels like kind of a logical replacement for him to kind of fill that more receiving role at the tight end position. And then to your point about Achane as a pass catcher, man, like I keep thinking about the possibilities of, because I'm a huge Julian Hill fan. I thought he had one of the most eye-opening training camps in the sense that, like, from what I thought he was as a player to where I now think he is over the last month has really grown, just in the way he's kind of evolved his game. And so I think about personnel groupings with him and Jonnu on the field, with Raheem and Achane, and how you can create these, mismatches where they're going to be in base defense and you can essentially run like a 10 personnel package with one back and like 4 receivers, or, maybe that's a little bit, too much in terms of expanding those guys' skill sets, but you can really get creative with what you put in the huddle versus what you put on the line of scrimmage before the snap to kind of get favorable matchups that way. So I think that you look at a team that has done that the last couple of years, I think has a better, ability to do so. And, one thing that I think gets slept on a little bit for Mike McDaniel is they always come out of the gate with something that we didn't really know about. And we don't, in the media, we don't get to watch those closed practices, like where, for instance, the cheat motion, whatever it's called, exit motion, where that got unveiled last year. We didn't see that in training camp. That was like, oh, this is brand new. So I don't put it past them to have something, new up their sleeves. And you mentioned Achane as a pass catcher, man. Like they were so close last year, so many times of big plays to him where I just thought he and Tua were a little bit out of sync. And it kind of reminded me of back in 2022, Tyreek still caught him, but a couple of those balls were just like a little bit deeper or back a little bit. And then last year they seemed to be right in the breadbasket. Perfect. So I think better calibration there on those deep shots really gives you a different element to this offense. And that's why I'm so excited about this offense. I think they have so many different personnel groupings and so much depth at those skill spots, particularly running back and tight end, that can really open up what this offense can do under the design of Mike McDaniel, obviously.
So staying on topic real quick, how critical and how important is it to have someone like Jonnu Smith now, who's a true receiving threat, who can do like what he can do with the ball in his hands in this offense, with those guys taking the defense over the top, for having somebody like him playing underneath and, in that area, how important is that?
Yeah, I think his feel for like hooking up, which is like when you are in a zone drop on defense and you've got, a hook defender in the middle of the field in that kind of 5 to 8 yard range. And then you got your curl flat defenders. Like he just kind of understands spacing. And I think that the more he and Tua get on the same page with that, it's going to be a really valuable option on some of those like third and medium type of plays where, Reek and Waddle can kind of lift the coverage and lift the shell and move the corners. And then you create that space in the middle that we know that Tua loves to throw to. But I go back to that 12 personnel package, man, with Julian Hill, because they so often run that jet motion, and you're probably not going to hand the ball to Julian Hill on that. but you can run that jet motion 8, 9, 10 times a game. And then if the 7th time they're starting to overplay a certain aspect of it, you give it to Jonnu Smith on the backside coming out. And we saw that in the preseason. They weren't ready for that play. And he had like 10 yards before the first guy even was, trying to chop him down there. So I think that his ability to kind of expand just the way this offense wants to create overplay. You hear that from McDaniel all the time. I think that he's kind of like the linchpin of exposing that overplay, if you will, like even more than I thought Odell Beckham was. So I'm a huge fan of what his skill set offers when he does get out there. But Jonnu, man, just those kind of like some of the areas that plague this offense, right? Some of those third and shorts, third and mediums. I feel like he's a really good answer to those problems you had last year.
I was actually surprised that we unveiled that in the preseason.
Right.
I was shocked.
I think once it went
I don't
viral
think
on
McDaniel can help
Twitter,
himself. Like, I really don't think he can help himself. He was too excited to see it.
well, once it got posted on Twitter from the practice, you might as well run it because it's out there.
Yeah, that's true.
Dude, I was actually pretty upset about that. I was like, thanks for showing the Jaguars like something that they weren't supposed to see in the red zone. Jonnu Smith motion reverse at the goal line. Like, I know people want to get their content, and it's like the fans are excited and stuff like that. But I mean, what's the
You can't give him the bread and butter.
you can't give them like what you.
the only
That's a
thing
special play, man.
I
That's
go
a
back to
special play.
this. I remember McDaniel was asked about that one time about how do you like kind of like decide what to show and what not to show in those practices, knowing there's so many cameras. And he goes, I'm aware of like these things are going to be shown, so I don't show my cards or I show the fake cards. So he like while we're there showing all these plays, he's aware, of what's going on, and he doesn't, he's handling it as he goes. But
He also subscribes to the idea that if you're good at something, it doesn't matter if they know what's coming, you should be able to execute it anyways. I think for the most part, they have that grace. I mean, last year, the running game, for instance, there were some key spots like that Dallas game, like they had to run the ball in some of those spots and they had to get yards, and they did it and they won the game. So I think that almost arrogance comes from the success that he's enjoyed in this offensive system, which Ghost, I'm prepared to eviscerate you in regards to why this,
Please,
offensive system is not untouchable, but very, very well thought out and has a rich history of doing what they're doing right now. So I think that's part of it. And yeah, like every team is aware of what's out there on social media. So like if that stuff gets posted, like they're going to see it, like they're going to find it. So if you have one duty as a fan, right, is if you can help the team in one single way besides buying merchandise and buying tickets and supporting the team financially, it's don't tweet out their freaking plays in training camp, man.
Yeah. But like you said, I mean, Mike McDaniel, it's pretty crazy that as a head coach, you have to have, like, with all the stuff that you have to manage, all these plays you have to manage, all the players, one of the literal things you have to manage is like, what are we going to show at practice? I have to be conservative with my play calling here, or want to show something because the fans are going to record it, even though they're not supposed to, and post to social media. Like, it's crazy that is something that you have to think about as a coach going in these training camps.
I mean, that's kind of why I think McDaniel with an apostrophe S. I hate when people say McDaniels with his name.
Same dude.
That's why I think that he's so well suited for, and the NFL game in 2024 because of that, because he is so conscious of those type of surroundings, because he's so conscious of how to streamline the learning process, which is still a huge part of football, but attention spans have shortened. I mean, shoot, I find myself like scrolling on social media when I want to be watching a movie and it's 11 o'clock at night and the whole night went away. So I think that he's really conscious and has his finger on the pulse of all those things. And that's just one of those that falls under that umbrella.
And
I do want to
hold on real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Another wrinkle to the Jonnu reverse or the jet sweep is now Jacksonville has to worry about that when maybe we run that once or twice a game, right? So maybe he's a little smarter than we think.
And a lot of times when you put stuff on tape, like there are plays that teams run that they don't really think are going to, pop necessarily, but you want to put it on tape so that you can see how they defend it. And then you get information from that. Like there's so much that goes on in one play in an NFL game, man. It's really, really crazy how much information is digested and taught and then reacted upon. Like that's why I love football is the chess aspect of it, man. It's so intricate and so fun. That's why, again, Ghost, I'm ready to talk about that part of the game with you, but yeah, man. So like it's all part of that. Like they, put it on tape, see how they defend it. Cause Coach talked about the other day, the way like the Bucks kind of came after Chop in that opening drive. And it's like, I'm glad that's on tape because now we know how, like what that looks like and how to correct it and, how to defend it better next time.
Now we could probably be quick with the quarterback position, but it seemed like Skylar and Mike were pretty even. Like it was kind of almost a coin toss. And what won the position for Skyler was that he was more willing to push the ball down the field. I mean, Mike White, you're trying to, when you're competing for a position, you can't take a check down every single play. And it seemed like he played very conservative. It looked like Skyler was sticking to, it looked like during training camp, he was pushing the ball down, like the quarterback in the competition that was pushing the ball down the field a little bit more than Mike. Was that just the main difference in your opinion?
I think, the writing was kind of on the wall for the last part of training camp. Like at first it was pretty even with Skyler and Mike getting, even share. And then I think Skyler kind of began to distance himself with a gradual daily win, if you will, over Mike in the practices. And then I kind of thought Mike came back a little bit in the games. And, when you watch that all 22 of the Bucks game, like there wasn't a lot downfield for Mike on some of those plays. And that was also true of Skylar. I mean, that's why the preseason is so tough to evaluate, because like, I remember the first game this year and last year, both those guys, they rotated the second half quarterback, and like, they really had no chance in those instances just because you had so many, miscommunications or missed blocks or, whatever the case may be, the offense just didn't really have any rhythm. So I think that I don't really have the answer to that, but I think that from my perspective, what it is that Skylar's in his third year in the system. He's a draft pick. It's a guy that they've really developed, his entire career. He goes from playing in an offense at K-State where it's a giant poster board that has like SpongeBob, Mountain Dew, like Scott Van, like just Adam Sandler, like cue cards that you just like say 6 words up your wristband and the play goes. And now he's saying these 25 word, play calls that include pre-snap motions and shifts and resets and all these things that he has to get a hold of. So I think that he's probably grown in that aspect. I think that the ideas that he has developed a little bit, how he sees the field and processes things out. And from where he is now, I think the trajectory that they're hoping for is that it continues to grow that way. And he can kind of grow along with Tua in the offense, because they both have been here in this offense for the same amount of time. Like that's kind of, I think, a benefit to have a quarterback that just has that much experience in this offense that is, again, very, very nuanced and very tough to learn.
So you brought up the
Which
Buccaneers.
is why I don't feel like, hold on real quick, Bob. Which is why I feel like people are freaking out about Odell. Like this offense is too technical. Like you got to give him time to learn the offense. Like putting him on the PUP was the smartest move. Because
you remember like Eric Ezukama's rookie year, everyone's like, he had the best preseason, but like if you can't operate from all 3 positions as 11 personnel, I'm not saying that he couldn't, but if you're not really well versed and like have everything down to be able to understand how the concepts change for a position, like you have to be able to do that because of the timing nature of the offense. Because if you're off by a beat, like Tua will throw the ball at the safety, and if you're not there, that's a turnover. So we can't have that. And so that's why I think for bringing in a new quarterback, it would fall into that category. Receivers fall in that category. And
Chase Claypool.
Every time an offensive lineman comes available, it's like, get him. But it's like, it's going to take some time. Like this system takes a while to pick up.
So you brought up Chop earlier and how the Bucks kind of ran at him a little bit. There's 2 sides to that. Just like there is the O-line, there's people that think that he's a specialist early on and he is not going to be able to help you much in the run game. And then there's people to think that he could probably do a little bit more. Where do you stand with that? And what do you feel like his package will be?
I think that you're whatever you feel about it, you're probably forced into having him be more of a 3-down guy early on, just because of the nature of the position. I mean, Shaq Barrett's retirement before camp began, Bradley Chubb staying on PUP, I should say. And we'll see what Jalen Phillips's workload looks like when he comes back. So I think that you're probably going to have to do it regardless of how you feel about it. I thought it was a good baptism by fire. I mean, Luke Gadecki is no joke, and he got into Chop's chest a little bit there and kind of got the best of him. But I love the way he responded. And gosh, man, like when we do get at full strength at that position, when B Chubb's back, when JP's running full speed, like Chop as a third rusher is terrifying, man. Like, cause the way he hits that speed burst. And I put this on a podcast that I don't know when it comes out. I'm pre-writing, podcast segments all the time. I don't know when they come out, but I kind of talk about this concept of how B Chubb and JP can rush from the 3 technique, which is out on the outside shoulder of the guard. And if you don't help him with the tackle, like if you don't give him some help in that B gap, then okay, JP's one-on-one. And if you do that, then all of a sudden you have a 1-6-10 split guy off the edge that you have to find a running back or a tight end to chip on. So I think that the concept of him in that third rusher role is really, really attractive, but I do think he'll play early on. And maybe the biggest development in preseason was how good Mo Camara was, especially against the run. Like he played consistently in both the 2 games that he played. And maybe there's an option where he's early downs and Chop comes in as that specialist role. I don't know what it looks like, but I think you have more choices than we thought you would when you knew that you were going in minus, Bradley Chubb and then Shaq Barrett with retirement.
I was a little bit on
say
edge
this.
watching Chop Robinson get erased by Kate Otten. So I was a little that play. I was a little bit like, we drafted a specialist, in the first round. Our offensive line is in shambles, and you're drafting a specialist, 15, 25 down guy each game. But then you see Mo Kamara play, and you're like, wow, this guy's like an actual 3-down guy. This guy can play 3 down. Say that we get eviscerated at edge for whatever reason. Mo Kamara could come in and play 3 downs. He can set that edge. He had a pretty good pass rush. But it's these 3-down guys. It's kind of like when you're looking at running backs, can they pass block too? And that's kind of what you're looking at as as far as like a specialist role. But we will see, and maybe they just put Chop in there at edge just to see how he would perform, get that on tape, like you said, and then he's rushing the A gap and B gap when Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips come back.
Yeah, he did that early on in camp a little bit, and then we didn't really see much of it. But if you go back to his Penn State tape, man, like those centers, when he lined up in there, they wanted no part of that. So, I've made this comparison in the past, like not from a production standpoint, but like the Niners did this back in, gosh, it must have been like 2012 at this point. But like Aldon Smith was a guy when they already had a good pass rush off the edge, and they brought him in kind of that similar role, and he had like 15 sacks as a rookie. So the more rushers, right? The more rushers, the better. So I think that he certainly will be productive this year, and if that becomes a situational role down the road, that's still a very valuable piece of your team.
And then you have Quentin Bell too. I hoped that he would have had a better preseason showing, but he is also a 3-down guy. He's going to be setting that edge. So it's going to be very interesting, especially when Bradley Chubb comes back. Hopefully it's going to be in that Colts game. We get an upgraded roster, probably about 3 or 4 guys right off the bat. But it'll be fun to see that. What people are waiting for is to hear this debate. It's going to be a very civil, wonderful debate on the offensive line.
On Team Travis.
We know where you're at, okay?
I'll roll with Ghost.
What I'm going to start with, okay? I always like starting these kinds of debates with middle ground, okay? Can we agree that Teron Armstead, Isaiah Wynn, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt, and Austin Jackson clear the talent right now? Like, whoever is going to take that field now, even if you take Isaiah Wynn out, you plug in Robert Jones last year, the talent of that offensive line last year is definitely clearing this year.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think anyone would argue against that.
Okay. At least we can agree on that, because there are some people who will say there's really not that big of a drop off due to scheme and all that, which we can get into. But I just want to have some common ground that right now we are almost at that level, not really at that level, but we saw what happened to the offensive line down the road, the Titans game, and then the Ravens game, and then the Bills game, then the Chiefs game. We were basically going in with, guys off the street. I feel like that's kind of where we're at now, and those games did not go well. So I'm going to let you go as long as we got that common ground. I can just go lay my head down very nicely at night, knowing that we have common ground. No matter how bad you kill me in this argument, that's fine.
Well, I mean, Robert Hunt did get a $100 million contract. So to try to, that's my least favorite thing a fan base can do, is when a guy leaves and it's like, oh, he wasn't that good. Like, no, he's a really good football player, and he was a good fit for the system. But the whole basis of kind of where I told you, like, I'll come back at you with, is just the design of how things are. And my general disagreement that the offensive line was the thing that contributed most to the lack of points down the stretch, or at various points of the season when they didn't score points. Like, I think you can tie that more directly to losses in the skill game, which is what this offense prioritizes. And when you have Jalen Waddle and you sign Cedric Wilson, and that was kind of your thinking for your top 2 receivers, and then Tyreek Hill becomes available and you pivot to that, like, you're going to feature an offense that features those guys. And kind of looking up some stuff for this, Ghost, I went back and Alex Gibbs, I'm going to date myself here. So first of all, how are any of you guys over 30?
I think we all are.
Okay. I never know. I can't assume age, man. Like, I don't know how old anybody is, but so Mike Shanahan.
Thank you for that.
What? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So Mike Shanahan learned all of his, football from Alex Gibbs, right? He's part of that tree that produced those back-to-back Broncos Super Bowls. And if you go back to those 97, 98 Broncos teams, they had 7th, 10th, like there used to be like 12 rounds in the draft. They had draft picks that were way down the board. That was their entire starting offensive line, was all like 3rd round was the highest player on that team. And then there was like a couple 7th round guys and a 10th round pick on both of those 2 Super Bowl championship teams. And when you watch Alex Gibbs at a coaching clinic back at the freaking Marriott, wherever, back in 1996, he's talking about how he'll never draft a offensive lineman in the first round, and how they view these offensive linemen in these different veins than anybody else does. And they want guys that are athletic and they can teach them to play their style of football. And you can track this all the way from Mike Shanahan with the Broncos in those championship years to his son, Kyle, who took that and ran with it and became a maestro himself, because all the stops they've been at, they've prioritized the exact same things. Like the Falcons offense was cranking because Julio Jones and Tony Gonzalez were pretty good. That Texans offense was cranking because they had DeAndre Hopkins and Andre Johnson, also not bad. The Niners, I mean, their offensive line, their fan base goes through this debate every single offseason. And they were debating it back in 2020 when they already had Debo and George Kittle, and they went out and drafted Brandon Ayuk, who he became an alpha in the offense. And so it's an offense that wants to center their playmakers, feature their playmakers, get them the football. And then the concept of how the offensive line really operates is this whole concept of firing off the football and keeping the pass rush at bay. I asked Calais Campbell the other day, how that challenges him as a defensive lineman. He said, I have 16 years of experience and I have to strip down everything I do and go back to basic, like one gap, just play your technique and hope for the best, basically, because if you take one bit of cheese with all the eye candy and the short motions and everything they do, that the unique ball handling in the backfield, it's just designed to give false keys and to keep guys on their heels at a position where if you go up and down, the NFL, like who do you want in an athletic testing battle? Like a 260-pound guy that runs a 4.5 or a 320-pound guy that runs like a 5.4. Like they're athletically outmatched every single week in that position. So the idea is to put yourself in positions where they have to honor that outside run and get on their butts and get, horizontal. And then we can, bend the flow of traffic back against that with the play action boot game or, whatever, like however you want to attack the middle of the field in the passing game. It just constantly puts the pass rush in peril. And that's why you've had so much success the last couple of years, even in games where you're down Connor, you're down Rob Hunt, you're down Isaiah Wynn, you're down Tyreek Hill. They just have a way to create space for those guys and to really maximize what they have on the perimeter. And I'm not like pounding my chest saying like this is the best offensive line in the NFL. I think what they did was prioritize continuity, because almost everybody on this line besides Aaron Brewer, who is literally the best fit to play center in this scheme in the NFL, like him and Connor Williams might be two of the better fits for it. And then Jack Driscoll, who I thought was the first guy off the ball every damn snap in the preseason. So they kind of have the same mentality, but everybody else is these guys that have been growing in the system and learning the system. And when you can play that style of football and how the angles change, how the tracks in the back are, the purpose of each block with the passing game and how it ties to play action, that is the idea, is that the sum of the parts becomes greater than its whole, or however that saying goes. I think I just butchered. And so you can go back over all these teams that have had, Matt LaFleur is a very successful offensive play designer, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, Mike Shanahan, like Gary Kubiak, like I can go on and on. These guys have all operated this system that prioritizes this. And there's been like 2 second-round draft picks on the interior offensive line across that entire lot of this very successful coaching tree. They do prioritize like athletic tackles like Patrick Paul, Teron Armstead, Austin Jackson, Trent Williams, like those guys make sense, right? But on the interior, that's kind of the spot where they feel like they can coach them up and get guys that are, they're not going to cost you $20 million on the open market. You can find guys that can perform in your system and allows you to allocate your resources in the positions they feel are more worth allocating resources to, like Tyreek Hill, like Jalen Waddle, like Tua Tagovailoa. It's reducing your costs in the interior is how you go out and get Jonnu Smith and go out and get Kendall Fuller and Jordan Brooks and Anthony Walker and Calais Campbell and Jordan Poyer. So that's the argument, is that this, I know you hate hearing it on Twitter, Ghost, but that's the system elevates the play of those guys. And in a game with finite resources, where you try to allocate your resources in the way that you best see fit to win football games, that's how they prioritize it. And they think they can win games in that way. And I think they've been proven right the last couple of years, and all these coaching trees have been proven right in that thought process.
So when you get that, okay, we're counting points now.
We're not done yet.
Johnny McEnroe over there.
Because like nobody wants to hear someone talk for 15 minutes straight. Like I've never been on a podcast where I didn't get cut off. So like, thank you for giving me the floor there.
Dude, we love that. Like we
yeah.
want to hear as much as you can possibly say. Especially, that, we'll clip this and put it out, and it's a good platform to do that. But what I'm going to say is, I understand that schematically, like that, this is what you want an offensive lineman. I was fine. Now, don't get me wrong. I was fine with the line last year. Injuries obviously played the part, but then we lost those guys, and Isaiah Wynn isn't coming back till hopefully like week 7. Do I have that right, or is he 4 weeks in? Or are we looking at a week 7?
He missed 4 games on PUP.
He's 4. Okay, so he's 4 weeks, could come back on that 5th week, but we don't know. We do have that bye week in week 6, which would give you would have to go one more week and then get that bye week and then come back week 7. I feel like that's the plan for those guys on the pup list. But what I'm going to say is when you get down the stretch, you face guys like Steve Spagnuolo, right?
Yeah.
Gets L'Jarius, for example, L'Jarius Sneed gets his hands on Tyreek Hill. I know that Tua gets the ball out quicker than any quarterback in the league. That's what this offense is predicated on. The schematics behind Mike McDaniel, genius. We do get that. But there are going to be points where you have to play football. And playing football means when L'Jarius Sneed gets his hands on Tyreek Hill, puts him to the ground, you need that extra half second. You need that extra whatever time it takes for Tua to get to 2 and 3. And a lot of the times that we did see, like, hey, they're locking up Tua as 1. He's having trouble getting rid of the ball, or is that pass rush getting in? Last year I don't know how much weight you put into PFF grades. I know that it goes back and forth between those that analyze the game. Miami had the 31st, I think it was 31st ranked pass rush win rate in the offensive line, and that's just, I believe the threshold for that was 2.5 seconds. 2023 was a little bit better, and then 2022 was a little bit better, and then 2021 was also, we were 32nd. Obviously, we were last in the league. So I don't mind going against the Panthers, going against the Broncos, getting this offense. I mean, there's way too much eye candy. There's way too much talent, and talent versus talent, talent's always going to win. But when that talent is equal, or we're going up into Buffalo late in the season, or we're going up to MetLife late in the season to see the Jets, and that defense is no joke. Even though Tua had no problem dropping 30 on them last year, and I'm very, very vocal about that. I will continue to be, because Tim Boyle played corner, so apparently that matters. But yeah, when we get deep in the season, like, there are going to be points where you need to play football, and those guys need to come out, and it's going to be that talent versus talent battle where schematics, are thrown out the window, and you're going to need that extra half second. And I know Tua's been more athletic. He's lost a lot of weight. He looks great. I mean, we're seeing in training camp, he's running all over the place. But personally, like, I don't want to rely on like the shoulder of the season to be on Tua to improve his escapability and be running 5-6 yards at a time. So that's where my problem is where when talent faces talent, especially against the Steve Spagnuolos of the league, that's going to break down. And we saw it break down. And the injuries that we incurred last year, Connor Williams, Isaiah Wynn, and Robert Hunt, is even down the stretch. That's basically what our line is now. Like, minus, Aaron Brewer, but I think Aaron Brewer would have probably backed up Connor Williams last year. It might've been close, but I think he would have backed him up. So it's like, we're going into the season where we left the offensive line off last season. Like, we didn't even have those guys, and we don't have them again this year. And I'm just like worried what's that's going to look like, especially the last half of the schedule. I mean, this team really has to go 6-1. We just did a schedule breakdown last time. If this team isn't like 6-1, or at worst 5-2, there's going to be problems.
Let me check my records. It's 7-0 on my record.
So, like, I feel like this team again has to win early if they're going to be in position for that 1 seed, or at least a home playoff game this year.
Okay, so I want to establish more middle ground with you here, because you made some great points. I don't think you're wrong in any regard, but I do have a rebuttal for you. So
you're being too nice. Call me a scumbag.
All right, you scumbag. We have two areas for middle ground here that we can establish, right? So we all agree the offense was really good last year on balance, right? And it's been really good since we've established this core, and it's going to be really good again. Do we all agree on that?
Of course. Yeah, okay. The core great. The talent, skill position, great.
We also agree they had issues in specific situations last year. You can't argue that either. You mentioned it. I mean, they were dead last in 3rd and short when they were running 11 personnel, which I think is a big reason why they went out and got Jonnu Smith and Odell Beckham to fix that. And that kind of leads me into the reboot to that whole point, is that they created the resources for themselves to address what they felt those issues were this offseason. And they could have done that. They could have chosen to retain Robert Hunt, maybe not that figure because it got pretty high up there. They could have chosen to go after anybody on the market that they chose to go after. And they did. And it was Jonnu Smith, and it was Odell Beckham, and it was Jalen Wright. And it was, heavy on the defense as well to give Anthony Weaver his pieces, which is a whole other podcast we haven't even done yet. That I think is going to be fun to watch as well. But they went out and got those pieces because that's where I come back to so many of these critical plays that they didn't execute that I think were more of an instance of not having enough in the arsenal, in the weaponry, because of injuries, like you mentioned, Ghost, because of game plans where they're able to erase those two guys and then go beat, one-on-one coverage in the slot with a three-way go. And we couldn't do it. Or we would deliver a pass right on time in a key spot and we dropped it. Like we had so many critical plays where I think we just didn't execute in those key moments. And I think you can point to offensive line issues in some of those instances on true drop back passes where they got beat and Tua got sacked and he couldn't move. And that was the end of the Titans game, right? Like that's what happened on that play. It wasn't good. But you go back to the Bills game and like Tyreek was open on a third down and had that drop before the Deontay Hardy touchdown, a punt return touchdown. He had the drop on the final drive right before the pick thrown to Chase Claypool, or in the Philly game there was drops, or the Baltimore game there was a drop. And so I think that, or just in general, going back and looking at one-on-one matchups that got strapped and weren't there, and that caused a sack on Tua because I got doubles on Reek and Waddle, and my third option inside is not open. I can't throw to Taron Johnson's back is all I can see right now. So I think that they assessed that was an issue, and they tried to find their solve for that, and their solve was the skill positions because that's what they prioritize. So that's my whole point. So I think, like, I agree they have to be better in those situations, and it was kind of an issue the last 2 years. My whole thing is like, why wouldn't we trust that guy? Why wouldn't we trust Mike McDaniel and Frank Smith and John Embry and Wes Welker and Eric Studis?
No reason not to.
Been across this, every scheme in the history of the National Football League. They've seen it. They've known more football than anybody you've ever known combined, and they assessed it, and that was their answer for it. So I agree that there are like concerns with some of those situations, and we saw it in the preseason games, like the inability to convert on short yardage in that one game that Tua played.
Yeah,
I know Dolphins fans were very frustrated by that, and I hope that there is a situation where they can resolve that with, whether it's what we talked about, going more tight end heavy, more running back heavy, more personnel heavy to create matchups to better execute in those situations. We all agree they have to do it. I think we just disagree on how they can go about doing it.
Go ahead, Bobby.
I think since Joe's over there, yapping for you, let me help Ghost a little bit. I think the issue is they could do all this, but it's not ideal. Like Tua being quick with the ball out of his hands is not ideal. That's not like what you'd want to be doing, but that's what he does. And then like my biggest thing is it works in August, September, October, maybe November. The problem is, and you touched on it, you get to Kansas City in -20 and you need to line up and just beat people. Like you need to be able to line up. Everybody knows we're running the ball today. You need 5-on-5 and you need to be able to run the ball. And that goes out the window. It just, when you ain't got the talent there, it just goes out the window when it matters. When everybody in the stadium knows you're going to run the ball, we can't run the ball.
We saw that again. We saw that again. We saw it rear its head in the preseason game. And I know it's just preseason, and I know Mike's not showing anything, and I know we're just kind of getting stuff on tape. You want to see how guys react in certain situations. That's more about what preseason is. But it's like I can't go through another season going forward on 4th and 1 just about every single drive to sustain drives. Can't do that. How do we fix that?
I mean, Mostert said it himself. The power game is going to be the real deal this year. Yeah. Mostert said it. Not me. It was not me saying this. It's Mostert, I promise. Travis, can you back me up, please?
Yeah, you heard him. The man said it himself right there. It's a third-hand account of Raheem Mostert.
Well, you know what's going to send the fan base into an absolute pandemonium?
Here we go.
We're talking about it backstage, and I swear to God, this is going to happen. They're going to they bring in Patrick Paul, hit a fantastic preseason. He's going to come in as an extra offensive lineman. They're going to overload the side. Tyreek Hill's going to be split out. No one's even worried about that. They're going to run this ball in at the 1-yard line, and then on 4th and goal, Tua drops back, throws a fade to Tyreek, and it gets broken up, and then there's a turnover on downs. I think that situation. I don't know if it's PTSD. But I can see that situation unfolding. We're all hyped up. We're standing in front of the TV. Patrick Paul's in the game. He's reporting to the referee. And then all of a sudden, Tua takes
Patrick
one
Ball
step
comes
back.
in motion like Trent Williams
No.
in his prime.
Plot
Here it
twist.
comes. Here it
Hold
comes.
on. Plot
Fade.
twist. This year, Tua's got the wheels, so we're doing naked bootleg, baby.
Let's go.
Ooh,
Naked
Peyton Manning.
bootleg.
Peyton Manning,
It's
naked
like Peyton
bootleg.
Manning, it's the Cowboys.
Hell yeah.
But so
I feel
Travis,
like Tua could beat him in a race, right?
Yes.
yeah, 100%. So Travis, I do want to ask. I know that schematically this offense is going to work. It's going to put points up. It's going to be another type top 5 offense this year. No, I don't know if it's going to be number 1 because it's hard to sustain number 1 years in a row, but it's going to be top 5, whatever you're in that same tier. I think the defense improved. I think Kendall Fuller is I think that's going to be one of the most underrated, even though it, was a huge offseason signing. People aren't talking about it too much. I rarely see Kendall Fuller stuff on the timeline, but then that's going to be huge. I think we upgraded the safety room, especially for depth. Brooks coming in at linebacker is going to be huge. The athleticism there. But when we do get down in those stretch, say that we don't have a home game, because my path to the AFC Championship is home playoff games. Path to the Super Bowl, home playoff games. This team is different when it plays. The team is different when it plays at home. Doesn't matter who's playing. Throw the Titans game out the window. That's fine. But you can throw in any offensive lineman. You can throw in any receivers. Tyreek Hill's out of the game. Waddle comes in against the Jets. Puts on a clinic. Him into against a very good defense that Tim Boyle played corner at, as Jets fans would say. Because Tim Boyle's a corner, right? I'm pretty sure. But say that we do get, we have an unfortunate ending to the season. We get a lower seed, and then we're back in Kansas City, we're back in Buffalo, we're in Baltimore. What is it going to take for when it comes to hey, they're locking our one? Because these defensive coordinators that are coaching these playoff teams are going to be different than the defensive coordinator coaching the Cardinals team when we play them in October. What is Miami going to have to do differently that they did last year? Say that we have the same talent at the offensive line, how do you get over that then? So I know the schematics and all that. We talked about that, and we do agree on that. But when it comes to football, do we just throw up our hands and say, we tried our best, or what?
So if you go back to a negative 25-degree game, I can't make any promises.
Yeah,
I mean,
do 30 degrees. Do 30 degrees.
Sure.
30 degrees.
Yeah. It wasn't cold in DC last year, but that was a December game where they just rattled off 45 points against a bad defense. But I go back to the game in 2022, there was 2 games in Buffalo where they went up and down the field. One of those games had their 3rd string quarterback in the game. So it's not like we've never seen it before. I know last year's end of the season really kind of sticks in people's minds. But I think that those wrinkles have afforded you the opportunity to, you said, I know you don't want to hear the game plan aspect goes, but that's kind of the answer to it. And then I also think that Jalen Wright and maybe the ability to adapt off of what the offense has been and add further wrinkles because of the personnel, but also because of your growth within the system. You go to the Rams, for instance, Sean McVay has kind of, I don't want to say pivoted, but added this leg to their offense where they did go beefy inside, and they have this new inside zone, also man gap type of concept they can rely upon, with Kyron Williams, who fits that really well. Mm-hmm. I don't know that they've necessarily incorporated that fully, although if you go back to the Dallas game, they were running power. They were pulling Rob Jones into the gap and leading up Jeff Wilson for big runs to get first downs. But that was also against a team that runs a lighter box than most and has light defensive tackles. Maybe that's why that worked. But I think that they're going to have to develop that change up. And like you said, the best way to guarantee a trip to the Super Bowl is to play your games at home. If that's the case, then I like Miami better than anybody else when they're at home. So that's priority number 1. If you do have to go on the road, hope that it's not negative 25 against a 2-time world champion and the best team in football. I hope that's not the case again. But maybe that's just kind of the nature of what the AFC is right now, because there are so many good teams in this conference. I can't find 7 playoff teams in the NFC for my life, but there's 8 or 9 teams in the AFC that I want to put in every year. And even when you get, if you project Miami as a 2 seed, which on my Thursday NFL predictions podcast, I might be where I have them, you still wind up facing a Houston team or a Jacksonville team at home. And that's hardly, the cakewalk that the 7 seed has been in the past. So they're going to have to beat someone good in that game anyway. But I think the answer is more just kind of the original thing I talked about, with better executing with more weapons at your arsenal. And then on top of all that, if you have Reek and Waddle together, it changes so much, because down the stretch, one guy was in, one guy was out. They weren't practicing together. They were playing games where they had literally no practice time together. And again, in this timing rhythm-based offense, if you don't practice it, man, it can get off beat. It's like a golf swing, man. It can get off beat in just a little bit. And that's all it takes to hit, develop the snap hook or the power slice. So I think that some of the things that you're hoping for, Ghost, you just kind of have to, we talked about it earlier, like you kind of have to get lucky sometimes in this league, in this sport, and like just hope you have better health and you're not relying upon, the whole damn team. Like you talk about the interior offensive line was blown up. Like those guys were all down. The edge was all out. The receivers were all banged up. Like Waddle's playing 2 weeks after a bad ankle sprain and he didn't have time to practice and negative 25-degree weather. Like that thing's tough to get loosened up. I just want to see these guys go into a playoff game where they have their quarterback and their star receivers and an edge rusher that wasn't signed 4 days prior. So I think your concerns are all valid. I would understand that there's no real like magic solve to like, oh, they're just going to have to find this curveball, but like just maybe make the situation on yourself easier by winning more games and also having more wrinkles within those different personnel groupings that are more running back and tight end heavy with the additions of Jonnu Smith and with Julian Hill's growth, with Alec Ingle, with what Jalen Wright can do to expand your offense and just get even better at what you do and remove yourself from those situations.
And just to piggyback on that, like it's year 3 in this offense. Everybody's on the same page now. And I feel like McDaniel's done a really good job this offseason of like making sure he keeps his guys healthy. I don't know. I feel like he's addicted to making sure these guys are going to be healthy in December.
And
like,
to Goat's point about like the PUP, like we're going to get guys back this year where I feel like last year it was like every week was just like, dude, like another one. Like those injury reports, man, waiting for them to come out was like, this sucks. Like it was depressing half the time because missing half your damn team. So yeah, hopefully, man.
We are due for some luck. We are due.
We are due for some luck, dude.
We are so due.
100%.
I hope. But one thing we can all agree on, O-line pro or O-line con, is that we want to win. We want to win a playoff game. We want to get over that hump. We want to do that. But we'll do one last thing here, Travis, and then we'll wrap up and get you out of here so you can get back with your family. It wouldn't be a Dive Bar podcast if we didn't give you the floor. So I want you to kind of tell people your like path to becoming who you are now. They see you as, the handsome, charming guy, face of the Dolphins.
Oh yeah. The voice of the Dolphins, voice of Hard Rock Stadium.
There's Travis and then there's Tyreek Hill, a little bit lower. So they see that guy, but tell people kind of like, cause we know you, we seen you coming up, but a lot of people don't. They just see you as the Dolphins voice. So tell people a little bit about your path, share what you want. You don't have to go into it too much if you don't want to, but I want you to have a chance to try and tell people how you got to where you got. You deserve that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Thank you. And just a quick fun story for you guys. So I saw Tyreek in Tampa and he said what's up to me. And I was like, I was jokingly like, oh, shoot, the Cheetah knows my name. And he was like, of course I know your name, Travis. He goes, my dad sends you all your practice tweets and I'm never in there. And I'm like, Tyreek, I kind of made this rule where I don't talk about you too much because every practice you dominate. So like, what's the point? And he thought that was kind of funny. So yeah, friend of the podcast, Tyreek Hill. But my path to this point, man, was like born from like all you guys, like just a diehard passion. And I really got into like the football discussion aspect of like being a fan. Gonna date myself once again. In like 2005, my senior year of high school, I dove into finheaven.com and just fell in love with debating people about football. My kid didn't like that idea too much though. So I kind of really got into like the analysis. I would like record games on VHS and watch them like 100 times over and like kind of study the game that way. Fell into like coaching clinics and just like really became a student of the game. And then the Welcome to Perfectville podcast asked me to write like a blog with them to go along with their podcast back in 2016. And after listening to their podcast and doing some episodes, I was like, I really want to get into like broadcasting because I've always, fell in love with like Mike and Mike in the morning or the Jim Rome show or like whatever AM talk radio there was. And I started pursuing it. And then after, building Locked On Dolphins up pretty well into one of the top podcasts in their network, I got the call from the Dolphins and kind of were discussing the idea of bringing this thing down here and doing a show like that for the team. And accepted it. It's been 5 years now, or this is my 5th year.
Nice.
And it still seems like it just began.
That's crazy.
And I love it now more than I ever have. It's a lot of fun. Being around the guys is obviously like a dream come true, and just kind of talking ball with guys. And I want to ask Jalen Phillips about how he won a certain pass rush. I can do that now. So yeah, man, just like a labor of love, dude. Like I like you guys talked about earlier, like I was before kids arrived and I had a bunch of free time. I was chopping up film. I was putting together audio and written content and, theorizing different concepts about what the team might do in the draft or free agency, and just always thinking about the Dolphins. Like my wife used to be my secretary on the car rides we would take. I'd be like, I have a note for a segment idea, and she would like take it down for me. So it consumed me for really my whole life. Like even growing up, everyone knew me as like the sports geek, and it was Dolphins too back in the Pacific Northwest. So like they knew me as that guy. And I just, after kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my 20s, got back to this and was like, that's what I want to do. And I went all the way in, and really bet on myself, and it paid off.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a great story, man.
It's a great story.
I didn't know this story. I didn't know because like I haven't been on Twitter that long, right? Obviously, I'm a diehard Dolphins.
He's one of those fake non-OG guys on Twitter that you always hear about. Non-OG.
Yeah, it's the Twitter world's definitely a different world, but it gives you so many avenues to learn the game and be more involved in the game, and I'm very grateful for it. Very grateful for meeting Travis. Like, kind of met Travis through Nick a little bit. Seen Travis a couple times. Seen him at the Tua Foundation. Dude, you've always been a great guy, man. I really appreciate you coming on today. Like, this is cool. I just love chopping it up, and like it's tough. Like interviewing the players, I really chop up balls different. Like with a guy like you, it's easier to do that because like we're more of the human side our podcast, so we don't really get into the X's and O's every single podcast. So this was a lot of fun. Well,
that's why you guys have carved out a cool spot in the space, because I mean, if you go to a football player, you talk to him about his like block or whatever, it's like, that's, they don't really care about me. They just want to talk about what I do because they're a fan. But if you can really talk to a player about who he is and get to know the guy and find out what's important to him, man, that's when you get good stuff. And that's what you guys are doing. So appreciate you guys having me on, man. Like, it's a cool platform. You guys are crushing it. When I saw Tyreek Hill, I'm like, damn, Tyreek Hill, he's hard to get. So, like it's really cool what you guys are doing. And obviously the fans love it too. So keep doing it, guys, and appreciate you having me on. And the kind words, like I never get sick of those. So I appreciate that too.
When a guy that's in the building with these players every day tells you, holy shit, you got that guy on your show, it meant a lot. It meant a lot to us. So we really appreciate that. And Joe's right. Your story was cool watching it transpire in person. Cause like you were the first person we seen, like this dude's on Twitter every day and break through that barrier. Like you were on Twitter every day doing your thing. You had your podcast, and then next thing you know, you're working for the Dolphins. So like it was cool to see. And now every old Joe Blow like us can start a podcast.
That's right, man.
Do what you want.
The face has changed in the last 10 years. That's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, you're definitely trailblazing out here, Travis, but we appreciate you coming on. This has been awesome. We got into some really good stuff. But yeah, anytime you got a seat at the dive bar, we're happy to have you.
I got a hat for you.
We got a hat for you. We got some merchandise, high quality too. This isn't your grandma's merchandise. This is nice stuff. It's coming from Joe Robbie. He only buys the luxury. Man is dripped out every single time.
Look at the
every single time I come to South Florida, the man is dripping getting out of the car.
Pretty
so
sure I'm trying not to behind you there as well. So I know you don't go cheap on the alcohol either.
No.
Absolutely not.
But
we got a hat for you.
Good bourbon. I got a glass for you as well, brother.
My man, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Travis. We will talk to you soon, and stay in touch.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you later.